Yes, sir.
Conscious Mindset Radio, a decade of authentic journalism, people engagement, whether in person or whatever this mechanism that we're utilizing now. A wonderful work, a dedicated brother of service, of integrity, and of keeping the lines of communication open. Today is Dr. Amos Wilson. Peace and blessings be upon him. His born date today. We know a week from today is Dr. Bobby Eugene Wright's birthday. Peace and blessings be upon him.
That's right.
Two phenomenal African Senate psychologists that labored towards the betterment of the mind and the heart of Black people. And I was so overjoyed listening to Queen Mother Cleo speak boldly and openly about the conditions that we find ourselves in and how we're able to be manipulated on our heartstrings or the fear templates through a misunderstanding of our own psychology and our necessity towards leaning. The Bible says, lean not to thy own understanding, but in this essence, we have to lean to our own understanding in regards to being tricked, to being manipulated, to being bombarded, mind, body, and spirit, and inundated with improper propaganda all day. So it impairs your judgment. It impairs your judgment. So I'm thankful to hear our elder Queen Mother speak boldly and proudly. I thought it was Queen Mother Moore in here for a moment. I had my hand over my heart like Queen Mother Moore would speak uh, boldly and proudly, like Fannie Lou Hamer would speak boldly and proudly. You know what I mean? So we know that not all hope is lost. Normally when you change ages and you get in a certain age bracket, uh, you lose the zeal. You lose some of the fight. So I was very thankful hearing her in that spirit, like I would hear Dr. Betty Shabazz, peace and blessings be upon her, speak. So
So beautiful.
I'm thankful for that space. I'm here today speaking on Voices of the Diaspora, the ebook series, and the docu series. They are one and the same. So to date, 6 volumes are out and in circulation, and those books are normally priced at $54, but for the month of February, 28 days, uh, they're available for $28.
Wow.
So, so at the beginning of the month, brother said, I set an audacious goal. I said, Black people love us enough to buy 100 of these bundles. I said it in my mind, right? I said it in my mind. I said it before I created. I said it before my ancestors. I say, hey, there's some Black people out here that need this offering that I presented, that I spent countless hours on perfecting and customizing after those who didn't even really have the inclination to try to read, because reading, again, as I said on your program previously, is presented to our young people and to our people in general as a chore. We could scroll through our devices all day. We could scroll through our devices all day, and we hit an article. The article say 3 minute read, 2 minute read, and you have to decide whether you can devote 2 minutes or 3 minutes to scroll through this article, right? So this mindless scrolling that we do and this commitment towards it is something that we see, nowadays. So customize making this book interactive with music, with pictures, and it's appealing and it's short. You know, I was like, hey, little short read. It might be 100 pages with all 6 volumes. You understand what I'm saying? So in between all 6 volumes, it might be 100 pages versus one book being 300-400 pages. Ain't nobody reading all of that, right? I say that like I didn't read Bob Amos Wilson's Peace Blessed Be Upon a Blueprint for Black Power about
Right.
20 times since I was young, and just listening to him speaking, hearing him speaking, and be a reminder of that beacon that's necessary to fight for the minds and the hearts of our people, despite the challenges. So, Voices of the Diaspora was created with that in mind, and then I took it a step further and began filming the docu series Voices of the Diaspora: 1 Million Black Stories from Around the Globe. So not only are we looking at the yesteryear and today, unsung from every generation, we're also taking this on the road to go to people wherever they are on the earth and get their stories and begin to share their stories as well. So set this audacious goal. It's 8 billion people on the planet. We could get a million of them.
Mm.
We could get a million of them. We could get a million of them. So this goal and this initiative was to uh, utilize this investment in our people through our books to fund the project from a filming aspect.
Mm.
So that was the goal for this month, and we're still working. There's still a couple days left in the month. You understand what I'm saying? So the books are available, and we're available moving them around. So I'm
Well,
glad that you thought
well,
enough of.
put me down for one, good brother, because definitely want to support. And also, we got to bring you back on because what we have to understand is, as Brother Kendrick said, the revolution will be televised. And that's why we have you on, because the information that you're providing for us is strong. And not only is it necessary in February, it's more necessary and more needed in March and April, in May, in June, in July, and every month that the Greco-Roman calendar displays. Because what we have to understand is that our history is a heritage. Heritage indicates it's still alive and living, not only through us, but so that we can do what we are meant to do to carry us on. So it's not an intellectual thing, it's a spiritual and a physiological thing, because what it does is it elevates our consciousness, which is what Robert Amos Wilson was doing to get us to realize that why we are where we are is because of our lack of understanding our heritage and making our culture a real entity rather than just something that's specious and superficial and topical, so that it can become real and resonate in reality by the choices and the decisions and the habits and the behaviors that we manifest. And I don't mean to run my mouth, but you got me motivated, rocking and rolling, good brother, because I
Look,
know
go ahead, doctor. Go ahead, good
that
doctor. Come on, get
that
it on the
when we
road
get
now.
this information, right? When we get this information and this higher level education that you provided, because I had an opportunity to read the first chapter, and it leaves us, and this is where I'm going, so I can ask you this question, so you can enlighten us, dear brother. Um, is that as we get these narratives more clearly and clairvoyantly understood, we'll not only be able to glean the wisdom, the spiritual understanding and strength provided by the testimony and narrative of those, but we will see how that better applies in our own narrative. And we'll become more clairvoyant and clarion with our understanding in our own story. So we'll stop playing a supporting character or an extra, and we'll come with more main character energy. Because when we read these narratives, when we understand this heritage, history, and truth, it not only helps us better visualize why we are where we are, but it also gives us the keys and the nutrients so that we can star in the show in a way in which gives us power. And I'll say this, dear brother, and then I definitely want you to speak. One of the reasons why they're changing the narratives that we see in the educational settings is not just so white kids won't feel shame and won't feel as if they are the bad guys. No, it's so that manifest destiny will continue to emanate in their activities. And in the most important activity is their thought process, where they will say they are the main character and that they are good and that what they do is good and they are going to continue to rule. That's a sense of efficacy because that's what your history and your story is supposed to do. It's supposed to elevate you and give you more self esteem. That's why it's so beautiful, the things that you put down, because it doesn't speak from the perspective of the oppressor. It speaks from those who are breaking through the oppression, not the oppressed, but those who rise above oppression. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. And I definitely love for you to speak to this, dear brother, because I know you are far more wise and intelligent in these matters than I. And I think you understand more clearly and clairvoyantly, using that verbiage again, why we need to begin to befriend works like this so that we can elevate and use this information to become even more profound and prolific.
So volume 6 deals with controlling our narrative and the necessity for it. It's reclaiming, it's a reclamation space, reclaiming our narrative to empower Black minds. That's volume 6, and it deals with this in particular, the mass media manipulation, the job of someone like W.D. Griffith with Birth of a Nation, vilify the entire Black family, but Black men in particular, and there were no Black men in the film. So the cinematic criminalization of the Black men in this film and the cheer and celebration that happened when the Ku Klux Klan came on the scene to vanquish the villain, the evil one, this Black man, boosted recruitment through the Klan. The Klan had almost seen its end, and a revival of the Ku Klux Klan based off of this film, Birth of a Nation.
Mm.
So looked like heroes, right? And we look like villains.
Mm.
So there would never be an instance again on the film where you could show Black people in general and a Black man in particular in a heroic space that didn't lead to some sort of degeneracy or vilification,
Mm.
because you can't have someone who is uh, typecast as a assaulter, right? Be someone that could be looked to as dignified, could not be looked to someone who is normalized. So every instance, you have to see some sort of degeneracy or criminal element lodged at this Black man in particular and Black people in general. Some sort of degeneracy when our children are shown, some degeneracy when our women are shown, some degeneracy when our men are shown, grave degeneracy when our family is shown. That is the mandate that's associated with mind mapping. So when we engage in fratricidal thinking
Mm.
and mental thinking, when we begin to kill the mind, our mind, and replace it with the mind that we deem socially acceptable to our enemies, they encircle us. but they don't have to attack us directly. We'll attack ourselves directly for their benefit. Because the world stands to benefit from us being in a condition that Dr. Amos Wilson, peace and blessings be upon him, called menticide. Well, Dr. Bobby Wright called
Yeah.
menticide, but self hatred. When he started to talk about the psychosis of self hatred, when you hate yourself, the best possible solution for you is to get rid of yourself.
Mm.
Get rid of yourself. So phenotypically, through bleaching agents and surgery, right? And then assimilation into a space where you no longer present yourself to the dominant society as something or someone that is a threat. You know, they had that movie, the Magical Negro. Like this was some sort of means to be looking at this as a space that is comical, right? The plight that you find yourself in the space of perpetual powerlessness and demeaning and disregard and disrespect. So they'll show you that. And you say, oh, okay, this is how I have to move out here to be safe, right? But we don't see the detriment that it causes to your psyche, to your spirit, to your heart. You know what I mean? Like they showed us Rosewood, right? They showed us Rosewood. Right? They showed us somebody like Vin Rings out there doing what he's doing. Then they showed him in the dress. You understand? So, like the dehumanization, the emasculation, the lynching that happens cinematically happens in your mind.
Mm. Mm.
So they show you this guy in Black Panther in Baku, powerful brother, right? Powerful brother, vegetarian, blah blah blah, whatever, right? And then they show in that movie us weak, powerless, capitalistic driven, and the only person that he hurt in that film was himself.
Mm.
He didn't fight anybody else. He's the only person that he was able to destroy was himself, and he wanted that house and that boat, and he had a house and he had a boat, but he wanted what he called his friends thing. So he sought after that. And he was willing to kill himself to do it. And he didn't want to leave. It didn't matter what was going on in the world. He had made it. He had that house and that boat that he had his eye on. So it didn't matter about anything else. So they could show you a man, for all intents and purposes, who has this presence, like the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. They can show him strong, and then they can show him weak because they can do it like a puppet on the string. And then the part that was most disturbing cinematically is when they showed us this film. Nobody said in all of the breakdowns of the original Black Panther film that they had, nobody said how natural it was for those black people to be fighting each other. They was the most technologically advanced society. They was thousands of years ahead from anything that could be fathomed, and they had to cloak themselves from the world, and they had to spy on the world. But they had that part of the turmoil that's right there. Still had to show us, even in that fighting and being subversive and having hatred and seeking to fight and kill one another. Literally. So no matter what it was, that instance with this film, Birth of a Nation, spawned into existence the accepted space of criminality where people could be hunted for sport and for show, and we would cheer it on.
Mm.
So you could look at that And then you can fast forward to this latest Gladiator film that they have out. So they show you a guy who you could clap for that played Malcolm X. And then you could see him in ancient Rome, effeminate, right? And you're cheering on his destruction. And you don't relate that to yourself.
Mm.
You don't see that you are a willing sacrifice or the part that you play in your own detriment. Because the narrative is spent so great that you look to fight within instead of to the fight without. And the consequence of that is the narrative that you run with.
Mm.
You run with a narrative of inadequacy, and a narrative of self hatred, and nothing looking forward to building for the next generation. Nothing.
So,
So that's the power of narrative. That's the power of cinema supplanting in your mind. Like they show these places in futuristic times and other dimensions, and you ain't even there. And you're watching it and you don't even care. You're not even there. You're not even in existence. They solved the problem of your extermination somehow, and they're projecting it throughout the times and the dimensions. They in 1,000 years later, you don't exist. Because you haven't even thought about writing yourself into the future.
mm,
That's why things become important. We have to have forward thinking and forward planning and forward execution of the mind and the people who seek to write themselves into a future by our own design.
beautiful. I'm going to tell you something you just said that was so powerful. We have to write ourselves in the future, right? And it's not an accident that so many movies in the 90s when you and I were coming up were based in criminality, were based in hood lifestyles, were based in debauchery. And yes, there would be this moment of message, but most of the movie was nonsense, right? And we got cloaked in this, you got to get yours, I got to get mine. And the thing that I thought was interesting, I heard a brother say about 20 years ago, and it really resonated with me just a few months ago. He said, man, the brothers that played in those films were primarily born in the 60s or early 70s. They did not see what they depicted on the films in their childhoods. Yes, there have always been tough neighborhoods. Yes, there's always been crime, but criminality and crimogenic societies, no. Black people, and I want people to hear this clearly. I want people to hear this because this is we can go there with the facts too. Yes, there's always been a violent element in any community, right? In any people where people abode, where you have large numbers of people, you're gonna have some semblance of violence. But to say that we were crime and violent infested is not accurate by and large for our communities. Our communities had a plethora, a myriad of things going on, and most of them were constructive. Even in Harlem, if you go back to the 60s, the uprest was primarily because of white folk killing our leaders, killing our public servants, killing those who came to help and support. That's when you had many of the uprisings. But in terms of just day to day, yeah, you had some crime, but not anything that was insane. But in the 90s, that was the focus primarily of the films and the entertainment that came out. And now today, we're more fractured and fragmented. And people say, how did this happen? Say, just go back to the films, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society. They made sure they played that movie almost every weekend on BET. And you know I'm not lying. Why? Because they had to get that inside our mentality. The music, you gotta get that inside. Yes, they're reporting on what goes on in the hood, but what about the other things? What about the businesses? What about the more constructive conversations? No, we want you talking about one thing, because the more you talk about that, the more it grows. And now you go to any community in America, it's still positive and constructive things going on in Black communities. You live in one, I live in one. We know it. But it is a preponderance of criminality and crimogenic environments. And I would directly attribute that to what you just said. The narratives that came out, the narratives that became popular, the narratives that people stuck and held on to came about the hood. They took the neighbor out the hood. They made these places and spaces that we had to get out of rather than staying here and building. And if you disagree with that, please enlighten me. But I wanted to use that as the preface for this question. How can we get our sanity back? And I imagine that reading your work and studying it can help us on that track.
Excellent question. Dr. Amos Wilson talked about black on black violence in the service to white supremacy, black on black violence. So we look at it and we assert, and folks think they get real deep when they use this recycled statement. We'll march and we'll protest when somebody white does something to one of us, but when we do it to ourselves, nobody does anything. Do you know how many stop the violence movements were spawned? Do you know how many treaties and ceasefires? Who was organizing them? Who was organizing them? Who was leading them? Who was community policing? There's an organization by the name of New Era Detroit. The brother Zeke and his organization. It's a global organization now. They've been around for about 12 years, and it started in Detroit, in the streets of Detroit. Nobody gave them permission to go and patrol their own neighborhoods and walk the children to school and the elders and all of that, and then be a response to some of the voracities and atrocities that were being plagued in the community. That was them. They said, whose streets? Our streets. So New Era Detroit, New Era Chicago, New Era Atlanta, even over in Nigeria. You understand? Like there's a necessity for this national organization around the globe. So if there was no need, it wouldn't exist. Right? If there was no need, it wouldn't exist. But they don't shine light on those things. Like they don't shine light on these other things. In order to have a criminal, Dr. Emmons Wilson was talking about it earlier. He said you got to go to the justice system to be criminalized. You got to learn about economics in order to be poor. They got to discuss healthcare to keep you sick. You understand? Like he's going through these things. Like they're the inverse of what you're telling me, right? So for the justice system to exist, they got to be criminal. You go there to be criminalized. Like they have to turn you into a criminal. So the policing agents that are in your community have to create crime. Otherwise, they don't have a profession.
Right.
So if there's no crime, there is no private prison. There's no prison industrial complex. There's no probation. There's no parole. There's not all of these blood sucking things in the society look like is exist in a society for decency and order, but it perpetuates a space that creates crime. They have psychiatrists and psychologists and sociologists that study this thing called criminology. What makes someone a criminal? If there's no crime, none of these institutions exist. So what has to happen? A perpetual thing in regards to criminality, right? So somebody has to be a criminal. So they have to show you criminality in a way that is cool. So they have to show you these movies. They have to have you. This music is being pushed because when they asked Lyle Cohen, what was it, issue or talent? He said it's talent, right? He says it's talent. He said, "Oh, I got family. I got people I got to take care of," at the expense of these young people that you pushing this music out there that they're activating on in a way that's drug induced and fratricidal. So when you talk about getting the sanity back, you have to look at, okay, what's the push? What's being pushed and perpetuated? What narrative is being pushed and perpetuated? So these young people are activated by this music that is compelling them towards a space of a drug-induced frenzy in a fear space that's promoting them to pick up weapon systems and go after their opposition. You understand? So it's on site. It's on site. So this insanity is staying. So they're on their devices and they live, brother said, and they got their switches on the camera, like, yeah, I'm saying, well, I see my options on site, blah, blah, blah. So it happens. And that gets attention. That the view count is through the roof, right? We grew up watching the 18. You can see a car flip over 27,000 times, it blow up and explode, and the people crawl out of it.
Yeah.
Nobody died on the 18.
Yeah.
Nobody. You understand what I'm saying? Murdoch got shot. I think BA got shot, but nobody checked out. Nobody. So all this small arms fire, AK-47 fire, all this stuff that's happening, nobody checks out. Everybody gets taken away. Right? So they could create this. So whence came this whole Grand Theft Auto type of situation when there was originally Europeans running around doing this carjacking and this stuff? So how did it go from those cats from out of the country to these guys in San Andreas? Now it's these black dudes, and now it's gangs on the corner, and it all this other kind of stuff that go along with it now. It's like, how did this narrative completely change? And nobody had an uproar about it or nothing, right? So the programming that exists in regards to these systems that the dominant society provides, and then these mechanisms by which they look at and judge what the status is on plantation, right? Oh, you don't have a lot of followers, or you don't got a lot of views. All these things are artificial, and all of these things can be manufactured. Right. So you're looking for some attention. You're looking for some engagement. The corporate sponsors and the structures that come with this illicit behavior propagation is astronomical. There's an endless budget for it. There's an endless budget to show degeneracy. So after a while, the regular people who don't want nothing to do with it, it's like, oh, I can make a quick dollar on TikTok doing this. Oh, I'm about to go do that. So until the playing field becomes leveled in regards to the psyche in regards to what true sanity is, because they think they're doing something sane, right? They're just pretending for some money, right? They're pretending for some money. So until we create perpetual situations of righteousness where righteousness is rewarded and abhorrent behavior is shunned and is eradicated, the space where the thing that's feeding the minds and the hearts and fueling generations, because it ain't just the young people, it's elders out here doing craziness now on the camera. You understand? Like everybody's out here with these devices being divisive.
Mm.
So they're shedding the light in regards to degeneracy at every level, at every age group. So the need for us to return to our real stories and not these manufactured skits and pranks. They're grown people talking about a prank. Grown people. These grown people are walking with people, and they have millions of people that follow them and watch them do these quote unquote pranks. This was a kid thing. It went from a kid thing, but it wasn't something that was looked at degenerate when it was America's Funniest Home Videos and Jackass. But now, again, to this birth of a nation narrative, when the young black people or the black people are doing it now, it's criminal.
Mm.
You understand? So the space of gaining sanity, we have to be able to look at ourselves and decide what this narrative is going to be and look at our cultural roots as an indication of how far we have veered off or returned to what our roots are. So the essence of our sanity, I said all that to surmise that as long as people think that what they're doing is okay, is a hard road to hoe, to point out that any of these things that they're dealing with are are in need of reform or in need of change. So the cats don't show up to the meeting when they on top. They show up to the meeting when they hit rock bottom, and rock bottom is different for everybody. And once you're in that space where you decide you want treatment, now you have to go through that process. So nothing out here is incentivizing them to not to be themselves. Actually, everything out here in the society is rewarding them for them to act the least like themselves.
Mm.
What they put on their face, what they say out of their mouth, how they communicate with one another, all of these things are manufactured. And that's true insanity. You really have a crisis of your identity when you look at yourself and you would rather show the world a pretend version of you because you think that they'll accept that more than who you are. That's the issue of insanity versus insanity.
That's heavy, man. You just said something that I think we got to just spend a moment on. This society desires for its constituents, I say its servants. It's very important. It's a very big difference. It's a very big difference. Its servants to serve it by relinquishing its sense of self and then becoming this alien spirit that Dr. Amos Wilson talked about. See, we think aliens come from Mars and other, unidentified objects, and they may very well be. I'm not some of these rascals running around here. I know they're not spiritual beings. I know they got to be something else. But one of the things I think is important to bring up, and you alluded to it so beautifully, and that's why I just want to veggie back on it, is that the alien like spirit that now, or construct, consciousness, if you will, that now people take into, they create a different persona. They create a different name. And that was critical. That's critical in colonization. They must change the name of things. They must change the origin. They must change the story of beginning, or Genesis, if you will. They have to, because it must become something else. It may keep its same shape and form, okay? But it can no longer look at its indigenous and authentic self without seeing shame, without feeling guilt or insecurity. And that's key. We be running around here thinking we depressed. We be running around here thinking something wrong with us, when the narratives that we've accepted about ourselves have inundated, calibrated, or manifested those kinds of expressions, ideas, and psychoses. And I know some people say, man, y'all talking too deep, man. Y'all going way off into a whole nother, y'all being too woke. But I would say, why in the world are people angry at being woke? You must be asleep, or someone wants to put you to sleep. And that's important, because there's a direct attack on history. There's a direct attack on heritage. There's a direct attack on narratives. Why? Because if you discuss those things, you begin to see what things truly are. And the narrative changes into reality rather than delusion, which the society feeds on, breeds on, and continues to perpetuate. I want to ask you this question. When you share the book with those who have read it like myself, what is a thought, what is an expression and sentiment they have? And then are they left feeling the need to want to read more?
Well, I tell you, my sons initially, they wasn't trying to read those books, brother said. They know their daddy, they think their daddy done wrote a Bible and he gonna make them read it, right? And they're like, oh man, I said, brother, it's 20 pages. Oh, okay, daddy, I'm gonna read it right now. So, my children were the test. My children were the test. So they read the books and they were like, oh man, now it's, oh, my daddy writes books. You understand what I'm saying? So the people who've read them, uh, one of uh, one of my god sisters, she's using the books as homeschool curriculum for her daughter. You know, she has a teenage daughter, and she's utilizing them in action. One of my elders from Haninsu, Nisuang Panu, is using it for his organization as required reading as a part of the library. So there are people who are mobilizing around these books and using them as part of curriculum, as part of case study, as part of analysis. So volume one deals with entrepreneurship. So if you're a young entrepreneur or an old entrepreneur and you want some case studies, proven success models, you can look at the people and look at their track records and do your research and decide, okay, in order for me to be an entrepreneur, I need to know how to start, where to start. So you look back to look forward. You have that Sankofa moment where you're looking at the history of entrepreneurialism as it relates to Black people, and you could see yourself building that success model. So you're like, oh, now I have a frame of reference. Now I can go look and talk to some business owners. I can go, whatever the case may be. Volume 2 deals with Black women, exclusively dedicated to our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters, our wives, our daughters, our nieces, our cousins, in a reclamation space because we are being bombarded and inundated with gender wars. And again, there are countless platforms that are monopolizing off of the misrepresentation of Black women. So volume 2 is exclusively dedicated to the reclamation of our mothers and our sisters. We have to look at that and look at them in that regard, right? If we all came from a woman, got a name from a woman, and a game from a woman, right? How do we say that? Because if we don't, we have a race of babies that hate the ladies
Babies,
that make the babies. We're
babies.
here. We're here. 30 years later, we're here, right? So from 65 to now is 60 years. So from 65 to 95, 65, we loved our women. 95, they were B words. You understand? A 30-year time. And then you fast forward 30 more years and they're B words still. And now it's a term of endearment. It's a term of endearment, a term of social acceptance, blah, blah, blah. We were not inwards in 65 and 95. We were inwards. 30 years later, we're still inwards. You understand?
Everybody saying
Right. So everybody everywhere, and dogs and cats are inwards, and anybody from anywhere, aliens. Do you understand? It doesn't matter. Now, this is something that we deem socially acceptable, but wonder why we wouldn't come together. You ain't coming together with no N words and no B words to do anything but party and BS. So when we look at this tonality, we think about this space. We went from conscious to woke in 20 years. You know, we was the aliens with consciousness. Okay, so you saying, oh, that's one of them conscious brothers, or that's the conscious sister right there, blah blah blah. To to the corporate uh delineation, the corporate downplay of something that was serious, something that represents 100 years of real movement, being marginalized to woke, right? So all of these things right here are participatory in that regard. So if we look at volume 3 and 4, we're talking about thought leaders. If you're a thought leader now, you can do your lineage to where those thought leaders came from. Those thought leaders, those revolutionary thinkers who were change agents, who were disruptors around the globe, who fought against the order of the day with their mind and with their spirit. So if you have an inclination in that way, you have proven success models that you can utilize to see, okay, this is how I'm supposed to move. Volume 5 deals with science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So if you are a scientist, if you are dealing with the space of technology, if you're dealing with the space of engineering, if you're dealing with the space of arts, if you're dealing with the space of mathematics, you have a blueprint or a black print of people you can draw from. So you're in a society where if you're smart or you have some sort of wisdom, they're looking at you like you're crazy, right? So you can look, and what Dr. Jawanza Kenjufu talks about being popular or smart, the smart kids were good with being smart, but there was nothing making smart fly. So they begin to dial it back. And now they want it to be popular. So they still use the word nerd. It's 2025, right? And they still call nerds and squares and all what they call them, simps and all this other stuff. They say all of these things, right? They still have this terminology to describe something that they should strive for. You should strive to be intelligent. You come from a lineage of warriors and intellectuals. You come from a lineage of agriculturalists. You come from a lineage of spiritualists. All of these things require intelligence. All of these things require intelligence. Even to be a fool requires a lot of intelligence and some consistent practice. You understand? So when we're dealing with science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, we're talking about building a society that we can sustain long term.
Mm.
And Bible 6 deals with the reclamation of our narrative. Because if we do not deal with that power to self-determine, to self-define, to self-defend, we will always be at the behest of whatever dominant society, whether they speak in English, Mandarin, Arabic, Swahili, or whatever, Russian. You understand what I'm saying? Like you'll be looking for the next one that's coming in line to take over you. So these volumes have received great reviews, and some folks have even led to being in the docu-series. So we're going to see some of the people. I have a trailer coming soon. So hopefully in March you invite me back. We can check out this trailer and you see, some of the folks that are in this docu-series, sharing their story. So it's a beautiful thing to have something that was in, my mind, to go from my mind to the page and then from the page to the stage of life and create a space where people find tremendous value in what you created and now they want to be a part. And books are still being written. There's still 4 more books in the series.
Man, this is powerful. Of course, you come back on, my brother. That's guaranteed. That's a already done data, man. You know what I'm saying? And I wanted to ask this question, good brother, because this is so important, and I also want to respect your time. Um, what do you want people to glean from this, and not just from an intellectual standpoint, because we're in the age of activation and engagement. So what tangible, what takeaways do you want people to away with it take and then move forward so they can elevate on their behavior and activities?
I want them to be the best version of themselves. I want them to know that it's okay for them to be them. You don't have to masquerade. Do you know that the people that are entertainers, they don't want to be entertainers all the time. They don't want to be entertained. I saw Martin in the interview when they were talking about the new Bad Boys movie, him and Will Smith. He said when he goes places, people ask him to tell them jokes. He's like, I don't want to talk everywhere I go. I don't want to be funny everywhere I go. Blah blah blah. Like I don't want that all the time. I like to listen. I like to learn. I want to hear from people. Blah blah blah. But then people see him like that. So this is how they interface with him. His name is not synonymous with who he is, right? Tashina Arnold is Tashina Arnold, but people still calling her Pam from 30 years ago. So she does not have the uh, credence upon initial interaction to be received as herself. She is received as who she had to become for a role on a television series 30 years ago.
Mhm.
Not the phenomenal singer, the mother, any of those things. Pam from Martin. You understand what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
when you get into this role space and you get locked into those things, this is what you're reduced to. So the key takeaway is to be able to come back into a place of your identity, where you look within and begin to share those stories and find value in the stories of you, the stories of your family, because that's your past, your present, and your future. So now your present is a gift for tomorrow. So to be able to operate from a space of love, a space of understanding, to utilize self love for the benefit of restoring love back into the earth, back into the planet. We're on a collision course with our own destruction because everybody's pretending, right? So, with these books, with these stories, with people sharing their stories, that space of self confidence, that space of self reliance, that space of uh, grand unification takes place. You begin to see people. We don't see people when we look at ourselves. We see things worthy of extinction. We don't ascribe anything of worth or value to ourselves. We become commodities for the global economic system. Something to be capitalized off of, something to be bought, something to be sold, something to be exploited. And then when it's no longer useful, destroyed. Destroyed. Literally. You just discard it and throw it away. So even from a humane space, it's more humanity associated with animals than they are people. So now this goal of reformation in regards to the power of your story, you won't seek external validation. You won't seek to go out everywhere and have somebody ascribe a value to you. You ascribing value to yourself. Now, you're ascribing value to your future. You begin to heal. You begin to develop some self discipline. You begin to develop some self confidence, and you begin to move in that way. So these my children, for example, my son's just like, oh, my daddy writes books. I want to write a book. You go from not wanting to read a book to wanting to share your own ideas, your own stories. You understand? Your own ideas, your own stories with the world. Now it becomes something again of worth and value. There's value to you. There's value to your story. There's value to your existence. Your story could save somebody's life. They in a perpetual cycle where they feel stuck and they don't feel like life is worth living. And they hear your story, and now they have motivation to continue on living. Your story can save somebody's life. Your story, your trial, your tribulation, your affliction could be somebody else's testimony. So these are the stories that need to be out there. These other stories, they've ran their course. Tubi, Roku, Amazon, Netflix, they have a monopoly on degeneracy amongst our people, and it should be over for them. These young creative minds that are making these movies and these stories, there are more stories to tell. There are more stories to tell. And as soon as people understand that and they ascribe value to their own stories, now all of a sudden the stories will change. The music will change. The books will change. The education will change. All of these things will change because people begin to consider themselves and look at themselves at worth and value, and the power of their story begins to cause a ripple effect now that we won't accept any uh, mischaracterization. No more misrepresentation. No more of this exploitation for pennies on the dollar. now we can really write our future into existence. That's my takeaway, big brother, in regards to that.
Salute to you, man. Salute to you. And just as Brother Love says, you taught me that. Thank you for being a wonderful
It's my little
teacher.
brother.
You know what I'm saying?
They love over there.
Yes, sir. Thank you for
See, if I was faking, I knew my brother. I knew this brother since 2014. 2014. That's 20 years now. Well, 10 years. 10 years. We going on 10 years now. 10 years. So that's 10 years ago, going into 11 years. Time fly like that. I got people from 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, literally, I've been on this path, and evidently, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Definitely.
So, honest to you, honest to your listening audience, honest to Conscious Mindset Radio, and we continue to elevate. I love you. I love the work you're doing, and I love the work that you will continue to do.
Love you too, brother. Love you too. Please let people know how they can get in contact with you, man, and let's have you back on monthly. Let's do this, man, if your time permits. And I definitely love to come on your program and get you some more guests if you need, any support in that. I don't think you do, but I
always do. I always do.
Definitely.
I'm honored to be on the same screen that Professor James Small was on. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
hey, man, hey,
that's crazy. Like, I'm just honored to be on the same screen. You know what I mean? Like, look, our living legends, and this is the reason why the shift. And this is my last point. The reason why the shift is necessary because Baba Ashra Kwesi and Mary Rakwesi's story needs to be told to the world. They dedicated their lives toward bringing us back to an epicenter of classical civilization. We have a preoccupation with this space-time period right here where it's an interruption of our civilization and us being the civilizers, right? So Baba Ashra Kwesi and Queen Mother Mary Ra, they give us the credence to go back and dig. Dr. Anthony Browder and his daughter, Dr. Elena's Browder, the father and daughter out there doing excavation in the Nile Valley. Power can't have all of the attention. I promise. Some people who like power, okay, that's fine. But there's other stories out here. There's other stories out here. Abiodun from the Last Poets is still alive. They're becoming elders and seniors. There's so many stories that come from the mouth of him that he was alive from. You understand? Like if we don't get it, we're gonna miss it. And then we're gonna have crocodile tears, like, man, I wish I would have. You have family members, you have elders in your family that lived, that in their 70s, they're in their 80s. Go sit with them, go interview them, go ask them questions. What was it like? What was their early recollection? How many times did they see America change in their lifetime? Don't allow them to leave off this planet with the things that are supposed to be said being left unsaid. Stories are powerful. Find a way to share your story. Find a way to write your story. Find a way to record it. You know what I'm saying? Brother said, I always remember Muhammad Ali, peace and blessings be upon him. He had that tape recorder and he recorded hundreds of tapes. They said it might be close to the thousands of those tapes, his thoughts and ideas. His children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren don't have to think about what their Baba had to say, what he thought, because he said it. How did he know? What kind of divine God insight did he have to know that in his older age, he wouldn't be able to speak like he did in his youth? So he was prepared.
Mm.
He's prepared. Baba Malcolm, peace and blessings be upon him. He kept that camera around with him. All around the world. Photos, video recordings, all kinds of things. These stories are important. These people are important. Your life has meaning and value. I want your listening audience to know that your life has meaning and value. There's people out here, they hurting. They don't think tomorrow worth living. Yes, tomorrow is worth living for you. You are important. And the more you tap into your power, the more you tap into your story, the more you know about living, the more you want to live. So don't allow circumstances to disrupt your being to the point where you want to leave when you should be living. And leave the legacy. Leave the legacy. You know, they say live full, die empty. Don't leave anything left unsaid. Don't leave anything left undid. Do that. Move that way. Share your story with the world. The world is in need of what you have to offer.
So beautiful. Where can people find your program?
Oh, here we go. Right here. This how it's spelled. Right here. Do the Knowledge Radio. Right here on YouTube. You can check out the website, dothenowledgeradio.com. The only way for you to get the ebook series at a discounted rate is through PayPal or through Cash App. So paypal.me/do the knowledge radio as a spell, or Cash App $ knowledge born alive. Voices of the Diaspora ebook series. Get it for your loved one. Get it for your family members. You know, if it's their birthday, is whatever you got going on. It's a perfect gift for any occasion. Okay, perfect gift for any occasion. And if you want to be interviewed for this docu-series, let me know. We traveling around. We're making all kinds of things happen. I'm telling you, it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be great. Like I said, the trailer will be out soon, just to give you kind of an inkling as to what we got going on. And you know, I'm sure folks will be pleasantly surprised by some of the things that's happening. So, peace and love to you, brother. Said
Love to you.
your
Love.
audience. Do Knowledge Radio on all platforms. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And we'll be in touch.
Yes, sir. We will. Peace. That's the one and only Knowledge Born Allah. Big salute to him as well as Miss Cleo.